This will be recorded. Just as a heads up and an FYI for everybody. All right, I think I'm going to get started, as it looks like the kind of folks joining has slowed down. So thank you everybody for joining us this afternoon. I'm Dylan Carey. I'm Greenway Program Director for Parks and Trails New York. I think many, if not most of you on the line today will have worked with me in the past. I oversee our work on Greenway trails across the state, most of which focuses on the two trails that the folks on the call generally are involved with, the Erie Canalway Trail or the Genesee Valley Greenway. We do have folks on this webinar who are interested in doing manual counts on either one of those two trails. We're giving it all as one presentation because 95% of that information, the process for counting trail users, is exactly the same, no matter which trail you're counting on. Next slide. Before I get started, I want to give a real quick overview of PTNY for those who aren't familiar, although again, I think most of you are. We're a statewide nonprofit that has advocated on behalf of our state park system and in favor of an interconnected network of high quality multi-use trails, greenways, for more than 35 years. We've been working on the Erie Canalway Trail since 1995. We've done that in partnership with the New York State Canal Corporation, at first seeking to complete the Canalway Trail, and more recently seeking to ensure that the trail system is an asset to those nearby canal communities and a destination for bicyclists from around the world. Today, our partnership encompasses a number of different programs. We have our Adopt a Trail and our Trail Ambassador programs, and I know we have folks on the call who are involved with both of those, and I want to thank those volunteers for their time. Our partnership also includes our annual trail count. We also have a long history with the Genesee Valley Greenway. Back in the early 1990s, our efforts helped lead to the purchase of the corridor by New York State from Rochester Gas and Electric into the formation of the Friends of the Genesee Valley Greenway. Now we're working with FOGVG and with Letchworth Gateway Villages on the Genesee Valley Trail Town Initiative. And so I want to thank both of those partners for their partnership in this work. So moving along, next slide. Since 2005, PTNY, as part of our partnership with the State Canal Corporation, has conducted trail counts at several locations across the state. In 2010, we started using a nationwide count methodology developed by the National Bicycle and Pedestrian Demonstration Project, and that work provides the underpinnings of our trail count work to this day. Since 2014, we've used electronic trail counters to count trail use for a full year at a specific location along the trail. And these counters run continuously once installed. They give us a broader picture of trail use at the points at which we have them installed. However, there are some limitations to those electronic counters. We only have a limited number, so we're only able to put them up in a handful of places along these very long distance trails. And all they do is count raw numbers. So they're not giving us any information on the kind of trail user who is using the trail, whether it's cyclists or pedestrians or equestrian or any other kind of trail user. So we've gathered this data as part of our trail count efforts. Next slide. And then what do we do with it? Well, we've published reports that summarize it. Since 2005, we've put out our Who's on the Trail report. Until 2012, that report focused solely on the Erie Canalway Trail. And after that date, it expanded to include counts along the Champlain Canalway Trail and the Feeder Canal Trail. Last year, we also started doing a count program along the Genesee Valley Greenway. So what we've done is given the reports subtitles. In 2021, we put out Who's on the Trail Erie Canalway Trail and Who's on the Trail Genesee Valley Greenway. And what do these reports include? They include a summary and an analysis of the places at which we conducted trail counts over the previous year. Includes an estimate of total annual use at that site, either the actual counted use, if we had an electronic counter installed for the full year, or an estimated figure that's based on that bicycle and pedestrian demonstration project I mentioned earlier. And I can go through at the end if folks have questions about the extrapolation process of taking a partial year data and extrapolating into full year data. I can get into that a little bit more detail at the end. Now for the Erie Canalway Trail, we also have enough data now that for the past couple of years, we've included an estimate of the total use over the entire trail. Last year, we estimated that the Canalway Trail system as a whole saw 3.3 million visits, 3.1 million of those were along the Erie. We don't yet have enough trail use data along the Genesee Valley Greenway to feel comfortable with making those estimates. We're working towards collecting that data to be able to generate that. And it's something that we're hoping to have in the future. Now, the methodology by which we calculate those estimates is a little bit wonky, but again, I'm happy to talk about it more at the end if that's something that folks have questions about or want to kind of get into the math of how we go about doing it. So next slide. Why do we count trail use? What is our purpose in doing this? Well, it helps us as PTNY and the entities that own and manage the trail, because we don't own a foot of trail anywhere. It helps us understand and improve our trail networks in several ways. First is through funding. For agencies who are seeking grant funding for trail projects, demonstrating the level of use or potential use is a critical piece of information. It's frequently required for grant applications. We know that the Recreational Trails Program, which is a federally funded program administered through the state for recreational trails and trail-related facilities, as part of the grant review process for that program, points are awarded for projects that demonstrate how underutilized facilities can be accessed or developed for public use. So by collecting this data, we're helping to illustrate how projects either on the trail itself or connecting trails can help facilities expand and enhance their utility for the public. They also demonstrate the value of trails to a community. Helps to ensure that public officials are continuing to steer public investment, both of time and money, into the construction, operation, and maintenance of trails. They're demonstrating the popularity of trails as community resources. Trail counts used more broadly as kind of a statewide tool, like our Who's on the Trail reports, really are a way for us to generate support for trails from elected officials, from transportation, economic development, public health professionals, and generally for the general public. It's the kind of thing where we're able to say, look at how popular these things are. Isn't it time you went and checked out this trail as well? They also give us performance metrics. Some of these counts that we're going to be doing this year are going to be at places that we've counted at in the past. And so this will give us a chance to measure how use has changed over time. Some other places that we'll have counts at, like I mentioned, the GVG, this will be some of the first time that we're doing counts in these locations. And so we'll be establishing a baseline that in the future we'll be able to measure the impact of either projects we've put time into or other programs we've been working on to see if they've been successful in increasing trail use. They illustrate how, these metrics illustrate how expanding our trail networks can increase their use. And they can be used to inform management of trails, including how and when it may be necessary to address issues such as places where trails intersect with roadways and how to control for that, how to address potential modal conflicts between users, what the ideal hours of operation for a trail should be, if it's something that should be a 24-hour facility or just used during certain parts of the day, how seasonal maintenance should be planned around a trail, what the kind of peak use period of a trail is during the year. So all of that goes into is the use of this. And then finally, helping to prioritize projects. There's a number of plans for a number of regions around the state that talk about projects for implementation that relate to bicycle and pedestrian projects, trails and expanded networks of trails that rely on sidewalks and other facilities for bicyclists and pedestrians. However, there's been a lack of data historically on the amount of use by pedestrians and bicyclists. This contrasts with car data, which you can go on New York State's website, and for basically every single major roadway in the state, you can see an estimate of the average annual daily traffic on that segment of road. The state has an incredible amount of data about roadway use, and they use that data to help make the case for why there should be even more investment in roadways. Because we haven't had as much data in pedestrian and bicycle facilities, we haven't been able to make that same case. So we would be able to use this data to help prioritize some of these trail projects above other projects. And we know that investing in bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure is one of the most cost-effective strategies for improving mobility, for improving public health, for reducing air pollution, and for reducing greenhouse gas emissions. So beyond that, why are we specifically focusing on the GVG and the ECT? So all the reasons I just talked about, but also we're working on trail town programs in both of those communities, really trying to help the communities in these corridors take advantage of their locations that are nearby these longer distance Greenway trails. We're specifically working with Brockport as the pilot Empire State Trail Town community along the Erie Canalway Trail, and we're working with 10 communities along the Genesee Valley Greenway as part of the Genesee Valley Trail Town Initiative. So really helping to kind of support those efforts and make the case as part of those efforts as to why the communities should see these trails as potential assets. So next slide, moving on to the process of performing manual trail counts. This is pretty simple, but there are some key factors that I want everybody to consider, or that we will need done in a certain way to make sure that the data that's collected as part of this is useful to us in going to create those reports and works for the purposes we need it for. So first things first, next slide, pick a location. So you're going to want to set up a count on a trail that's about 50 to 100 feet in from a trailhead. So you'll be able to catch people using a trail and won't be distracted by activity from the nearby trailhead, or won't end up counting people multiple times near that trailhead. Next slide. So you can see on this slide here, this is where I would pick to count trail use in this location. It's a little bit away from the trailhead. It's at a place where you know that there's not going to be too much else going on, that it's you know, that it's a good spot to locate, to do a trail count. And that gets to my next point about picking a location, is that you're all going to know your local stretch of trail best. I know this because I'm from Schenectady. I've been on that trail since I was a small kid. And so I know that that spot that I put that arrow is going to be the best place to count trail use. You guys will all know that for your local stretches of trail. But beyond that, we do want to make sure that we're getting counts performed in as many places as possible. We don't want everybody to be doing counts in the same location. So just let us know where it is that you think you want to go do trail counts, so that we can just coordinate to make sure that we're hitting enough, you know, that we've got everybody spread out as effectively as possible. We're not going to say, oh no, you need to go drive 2 hours to do a count. It's more a function of like, hey, we don't need 5 people all doing a count at the same intersection, maybe split it up over the next, you know, over a handful of different places. If it's helpful to have a map, you can use our Erie Canalway Trail map at cycletheeriecanal.com. That's what the screenshot is pulled from. Or you can use the Genesee Valley Greenways map at map.fogvg.org. So next slide. The next thing that goes into performing a count is picking the time. There's a little bit of complication in this. We do need to ensure that the counts you've done cover enough time for the data you collect to be statistically legitimate and usable for us to extrapolate from. So we have the rules that you see on the slide here. For each site, we need you to count at least 2 weekdays and 2 weekend days. Weekdays need to be either Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday. You can't do counts on Monday or Friday. Can't do counts on holidays. And for weekend days, it can be either Saturday or Sunday. But what we do ask is that when you pick one, do it the same day the following week. So you do 2 Tuesdays in a row and 2 Saturdays in a row, or 2 Thursdays in a row and 2 Sundays in a row in the same week. That will give us the data that we need in order to be sure that we're able to extrapolate that data into a full year's, you know, a full year's estimate, and that the data, you know, just collecting over one period, you know, on one day, maybe it's raining, maybe something weird's happening, maybe there's a race going on, maybe, you know, there's all number of factors that could throw off the data. So we need to have enough data collected in order to know that it's not being swayed too much by wonky data or something that's strange happening. Anytime you do a count, it needs to be for 2 full hours. We want it to be at peak hours. Now, of course, how are you going to know what peak hours are if you haven't done the count yet? You're going to have to just guess. You're going to have to use your own knowledge again of that local stretch of trail to say, I think that probably between 1 and 3 p.m. is going to be the busiest. Or I know a lot of people use this trail in the morning, so 9 and 11 a.m. is going to be the busiest. We leave it up to you. Whenever you think is going to be the busiest time for you to do that counts. As I said, you know your local segments better than we do. The final thing is that we ask to have all of these counts completed before Labor Day. This, again, these formulas all work best when they're based on peak use. And so we're looking to see a peak summer use count for the trail. That, of course, does still basically give you 2 full months in which to get this done. And so then the next piece is actually doing the count. So we're going to send out these count sheets after the call, but they're pretty straightforward. Basically, it's a 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper that you can print out. There's a top section that you can see. I took a screenshot of here that we need you to fill out with information about who's doing the count, when and where they're counting, what the conditions are on the trail that day. We ask that you fill it all out and send it to us. We want to know exactly where you were when you did the count. You see, we've got GPS coordinates there. That's just so that we can say, okay, we know that, Joe was exactly at this spot doing this count on June 28th from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. Because we're going to get all this information for you guys and then put it in a folder and look at it again in January of 2023. And I don't want to have to go back and send you an email and say, hey, Joe, I know you did this, but we doesn't really, we want to have all the information here so that when we're getting ready to write those reports for who's on the trail, everything we've got is there for us. Each time you do a new count, each of those 2-hour stretches, though, use a new sheet. Don't reuse the sheets for multiple times. You can have just one person do the count, but if it's going to be busy or if you just want the company, you can have multiple people. Maybe have one person doing the actual counting, the other person recording it. Now, next slide. Counting itself is pretty simple. You position yourself along the trail. You maybe bring a lawn chair, bring some water, some snacks. I've brought a dog to come and sit along with me while I'm hanging out. Don't recommend actually bringing a dog. They get restless. They don't understand why you're not walking and why you're just sitting. Sorry, that's a whole aside. So you're sitting in your chair, face directly at the trail, draw an imaginary line across the trail, and then anytime somebody crosses that imaginary line, you just make a tally mark in the appropriate box for each type of trail user that passes that imaginary line in either direction. So there's a couple of kind of specific cases that I'll point out with there. If you've got a tandem bicycle, you mark a tick for each rider. If you've got somebody pushing a baby carriage or a stroller, you do, and I think we've got it clarified now on the form that the passenger in the stroller goes there, the person pushing the carriage or the stroller, record them as a walker. We've got a field for other, that's if they're using some other form of transportation, a unicyclist, or, for example, maybe, or I don't know what else, you never know what you might see in the trail. But you should be recording them for how they're passing you, not what they're doing, like what they're going to do. I know last year we had a couple of forms that they recorded somebody doing fishing, which they would have probably just been walking past them while they were going to do the fishing. So they should have been counted as walkers. And I think that's how we ended up handling the data. If the same person passes you twice, if they walk out one direction and then come back the same direction while you're sitting in that same spot, count them twice. The formulas take all of that into consideration. And then last thing, make sure you're set up somewhere that doesn't block the trail, but from where you can easily see everybody that's coming, everybody that goes past you. We don't want anybody to get hurt. You're not there to obstruct anything. You're not there to, you're just there observing and recording. And you want to make sure that you can see people coming from either direction. But again, you're there as just a recorder. You're not there to enforce trail use or trail rules. You're not there for any other purposes. Just sit and record who's going by. So next thing is submitting the data. So next slide, Erica. I saw there was a question. We'll get to that at the end. Yeah, sorry. We were just going to go through a couple of slides just, as examples. So this photo, as those people went past, that's 4 bicyclists. Next slide. 3 walkers. As much as we love dogs, we're not counting dogs. So 3 walkers. This you'd count as 2 cyclists and 1 recumbent cyclist. And so then getting into submitting the data. And actually, I think I'll speak to Ray's question now. And the answer is no, we're not counting electric bikes separate. Any electric bikes should just be included with bicycles. There's a couple of reasons for that. One is that the technology is such that you can't always tell when a bike is electric assist or not. And the second is that it's not something that we're particularly interested in trying to tell a story around. It's something that we'll consider in the future, but for this year, any electric bike just count as a bicycle. So submitting the data. Once you guys have done these counts, you have to get the data to us. And there's 2 ways that are fairly easy for you to do it, and then a third way that we'll accept if that's the only way that'll work for you. So the easiest way is we've got this web form set up at ptny.org/count form. It's got all the same questions as the paper count form. Fill that in with what you've recorded while you were in the field and hit submit, and the data comes to us. We'll send the link to that as part of this presentation. We'll send it around to everybody after the presentation is done. The second way that's also easy enough for us is you can either take a picture or scan the completed forms when you've done it and email it to me. You can just send it directly to me. My email is dcarey@ptny.org. You can see it on the screen. If for whatever reason you're not able to do either of those, you can return it to us by mail. Our office is there, Parks and Trails, New York, 33 Elk Street, Albany, New York, 12207. But really, save the postage, use one of the first 2 methods. If you mail it to us, we'll just have to digitize it ourselves. And you're just wasting the postage. We don't need to keep the hard copies for any reason. Do have one other request though as well, and this is important. Send us pictures. Send us pictures of where it was that you did the count location. And if possible, see if you can get somebody to take a picture of the volunteers doing the counts. We're always looking for information or always looking for photos to include in the publications and in presentations that we do about trail use so that we can demonstrate, look, this is how we do this process. This is, these are our volunteers being involved in the trail. So yeah, that's all there is to it. Next slide, we'll open it up to questions. Hi, Bob.
Hey, Dylan. A quick question, which maybe maybe just a little slightly off topic, but I was in the Monroe County Transportation Active Transportation Plan meeting the other day, and they had some trail information. So I guess they've got a map of bike trail assets and bike trail liabilities. And I was wondering if you guys are in the loop on that. I did, I looked at the invite list on that meeting, and I didn't see anyone obviously from PTNY, but I didn't know if that was something that's that you guys were aware of.
Yeah, I mean, we're aware of that effort that's underway. I haven't connected with Bob from GTC on that. It's something that's on my to-do list for the summer, but yeah.
Okay, and so there's, I was just thinking in terms of if there was any obvious connections between trail counting and getting them involved, since they've got another body of people.
Yeah, I'll definitely reach out to them. I know that in the past we have always partnered. GTC has set up trail counters along the Canalway Trail and along the Genesee Valley Greenway in the past, and we've done data exchanges with them that you'll see in a couple of the past Who's in the Trail reports, data that's based on counters that they've set up. So yeah, we'll definitely look to any chance we can get to partner with organizations that'll do trail counts. We'll take it, and we've generally been very open with sharing data with other locations. So, a couple of other questions. Ray mentioned having counts done on the same days of the week and times. Yes, as much as possible, stick to the same time slots. If we're not going to be out there with a ruler wrapping your fingers if you're not able to do exactly the same thing. But yeah, as much as possible, it gives more reliable data if you're able to stick to the same time slot. Derek asked, in an urban location without really clear trailheads, where might we set up? I would do a similar thing where I would basically try to set up in a location where you expect to have a place to be safely off the trail so that you're not obstructing anything. Have a place where you're going to expect people to be passing relatively seamlessly and not having a lot of people kind of milling around. Just have it very clear of the numbers that you're going to be counting. And beyond that is sort of use discretion. I know in the Syracuse context that you're referring to, Derek, there's a number of different places. I mean, if you guys wanted to count on road in front of the museum, that would be something you could do. If you wanted to count on the creek walk or out on the newer stretch on the east side, those are both options as well. And if you want, we can connect on trying to kind of identify some good specific locations. Steve also had a question about sampling dates in consecutive weeks. We strongly prefer that they are. I think that gives us the best, most reliable data. If we've got samples that are taken from a couple of different weeks apart, are we going to just throw all the data out? No, we'll use it, but we prefer to have the sample dates in consecutive weeks if possible. Any other questions? You can stick them in the chat, in the Q&A. You can raise your hand and we can unmute folks. All right. Well, I don't think we're going to drag this out any longer if folks don't have any questions. I do want to thank everybody for joining us this afternoon. Like I mentioned, we are going to send around some more information. We'll send around those forms. May come from Erica over the next couple of days. I'll be out of the office. If not, it'll come from me early next week. And if you guys have any questions, I'm sure that you might think of as soon as you get off this call or that come to you kind of later tonight, send us an email. You can see both of our emails are on the screen there, and we'll do our best to get back to you. And so again, thank you guys for your interest. We look forward to seeing the information from the counts that you all go out and perform, and working with all of you to kind of use that data to advance our great trail systems. So thanks, everybody. Have a good night.